Seekers. That was a thrilling clip of my grunge band in the 90s. We were called Samsara. That's what we were called. And that's a song about a Canadian fan of ours called About a Girl. Yeah, that's it. That's what that is. So I hope you enjoyed that, and you can see it as a separate, what do you call upload on this channel if you want to see the whole thing. So I thought I would talk to you a little bit more about Zazen Yojinki by Kazan. There's the kanji as written by me. I don't write kanji very well, so don't imitate the way I write it, but I write it legibly. My Japanese friends could read the kanji I wrote, but they always complained that it was written wrong. So there you go. But it's called Zazen Yojinki, and I talked about it 2 videos ago. Points to keep in mind when practicing Zazen. That's what I called the previous video about it. And I wanted to read a couple of more things, more than a couple, a few more things out of that essay because I thought they were interesting. So let's just jump right into it. He has a lot to say in this essay about, what would we call it, about phenomena that are often referred to as kind of insights, or the kind of things people want from meditation. I think a lot of people, myself included when I first started, to be fair, when they first start meditating, they want insights. They want something to happen. They want some kind of special state of mind, or something to happen, something other than just sitting there being bored. That's what they want to happen, and Kazan has a few things to say about this, so I think they might be instructive. He says, "Sometimes your body may feel hot or cold, rough or smooth, stiff or loose, heavy or light, or astonishingly wide awake. Such sensations are caused by a disharmony of mind and breath." And after this, he gives the advice that I talked about on my previous video about this. He said you should regulate your breathing as follows: open your mouth for a little while, letting long breaths be long, short breaths be short, and harmonize it gradually. So you're trying to follow your breath to kind of get rid of those kind of feelings. Now, here is the next paragraph. This one gets kind of more into this idea. "Your mind may feel as though it is sinking or floating, dull or sharp, or as though you can see outside the room, inside your body, or the body of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. Sometimes you may feel as though you have wisdom and can understand the sutras or commentaries thoroughly. These unusual and strange conditions are all sicknesses that occur when the mind and breath are not in harmony. When you have this kind of sickness, settle your mind in your feet." So that one I found interesting, because this is more to the point. These are the kind of things we want, I think. Say we because I'm including myself in this. When we're doing Zazen, you want to, things like feeling like you're floating, you can see outside the room or inside your body, or see the body of I don't know if he's saying you can see inside your body, or inside the body of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, or see the bodies of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. I'm not sure which he means, but in either case, it's the kind of thing. A lot of meditators strive for this stuff, whereas in our tradition, we're trying to get away from it. And this one gets even more to the point. "Sometimes you may feel as though you have wisdom and can understand the sutras or commentaries thoroughly." And even this he calls unusual and strange conditions that are sicknesses that occur when the mind and breath are not in harmony. So yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. There was a moment in my practice, which I still remember today, where I did suddenly feel like I could understand the sutras and commentaries. And it wasn't something that happened during Zazen. It was something that kind of happened outside of Zazen. I can remember a moment when I was riding my bicycle around doing some kind of errands for Tsuburaya Productions. Sometimes the company was situated in a kind of suburban area, a part of Tokyo that wasn't really built up for businesses and stuff. And so if we needed something, usually somebody from the company had to borrow. The company had like 4 or 5 bicycles for use by employees, and people would be sent out to go get whatever it was. You'd have to ride the bicycle over to the nearest station, which took about 10 minutes to ride by bicycle, and then there'd be some shops and things. So I was doing that, riding around, and I remember suddenly, gosh, I wish I could remember which koan, because it would make the story a little fuller, but I can't remember. But some koan just kind of occurred to me in my mind, and I was like, oh, I get that, And I also remember feeling like there was one line, I don't know who said this, but somebody talked about using the sutras as toilet paper because they're no good for anything else. And I was like, oh, I get what that means, suddenly, and feeling very proud of myself. And to this day, those insights have served me, and I can make videos about them, and I can talk about them, and I can use them as part of the way I explain things when I explain books. So it's not as if those insights are completely useless, but they're beside the point of Zazen. And this is this kind of weird thing that we gotta kind of negotiate. If you're a teacher of Zazen, which I am, you want to teach people about this stuff, and you want to give them kind of the philosophical underpinnings, and some of the being able to give people the philosophical underpinnings of Zen practice involves making use of insights that you've had, that I've had during Zazen, and I can talk about those. But those are still not the point of the practice. This is something that's really fundamental to it, and it's one of the things I think makes Zazen interesting, is that doesn't matter if you have the greatest insight in the world, the most amazing, profound, revelation of the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. That's not the point. The point is to sit and stay with just the sitting. So the thing about those insights is you have the insight, and then a few minutes later you're not having the insight anymore. You're just sitting there. This has also happened to me. I've told this story a few times, probably on this video channel. I was sitting at a retreat in Minnesota, and it was in the summer, and it was a 7-day Zazen sesshin, and one of the days, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th day of this sesshin, I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden, maybe, we were doing 40-minute periods of Zazen, so I would say maybe halfway through, 20 minutes into a period of Zazen, I suddenly understood how Zazen continues and maintains its full force even if you are disturbing it. So, and I remember realizing that I could not do anything to disturb this Zazen. So I was deliberately trying to bring up distracting thoughts, because I'm like, well, there must be some way to burst this bubble. I guess the first few minutes are like, I don't want to burst the bubble, but after a while I'm like, this can't be unburstable. So I would try to disturb it some way, and I couldn't disturb it. The Zazen was absolutely solid, and it was absolutely as much a full revelation of the truth of the universe, no matter what was going on in my brain. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I sat this way, and it continued throughout the rest of the period of Zazen. Bell rings. Ding! And then we got up, and I believe we did something else. Probably went to lunch or had a break or something. We didn't go directly back into Zazen. I remember that much. And so whenever it was, an hour later or whatever, however long it took, when I got back to sitting Zazen again, I'm like, okay, let's enjoy that beautiful insight. And then nothing. Nothing. No insight at all. It was just back to the same old grind, looking at the wall, trying to stay reasonably awake, trying to just get through it until the next bell rang. No insight at all. And I think this is why these teachers always emphasize this, because the insights may come. They may actually come. So there's your little advertisement for Zazen. If you sit long enough, you will probably have states of insight. You will probably have states of bliss. You'll probably have states of profound, like, wonderment and cool things happening. But you gotta be able to drop it, because they don't last. They just come and then they go. And they can be valuable. They can teach you something. That one I just mentioned, the one I just told you about, certainly did teach me something. It made me realize that there's a essay by Dogen. Well, it's part of Bendoa, but it's often separated from Bendoa and presented as Jijuyu Zanmai. So you can look that up on the internet if you want. And he talks about how Zazen is the most beautiful state and takes care of everything and has this wonderful, profound power, and he gets very poetic about it. And he also says that no matter what you do, you can't make that profound power any lesser. It's just always there within the practice. And I realized at the moment that I had that experience that, oh, that's true. That's actually true. He's not just saying something metaphorical or he's not just trying to encourage us by saying, hey, this is great stuff. Don't worry about if it doesn't feel great. There's the keep peeing behind me. Anyway, he's actually describing a real experience, a true experience related to the practice. And so I had that moment, and I had the sense that it was true, and that's been valuable to me. That's my point I'm trying to make. But when it came time to get back to doing Zazen again for the next period, that was gone. And the point is to stick with the Zazen even when it's like that, which is basically most of the time. You might get some insights here and there, but most of the time it's just going to be kind of boring. Here's another one. I've quoted this. This is sort of, Kazan didn't originate this, but I'm glad to have it in writing somewhere, because I talk about this a lot, or I quote this a lot. It's just advice. Though you should not begrudge anyone the Dharma, do not preach it unless you are asked. Even if someone asks, keep silent 3 times. If the person still asks you from his or her heart, then teach him or her. Out of 10 times you may desire to speak, remain silent for 9, as if mold were growing around your mouth. Blah, yuck. So that's another piece of good advice. I should probably maybe I'll do a whole video on that one. But for now, I'll just say that I think that's really good advice. People are often asking me, how do I teach my friends? How do I get my friends into Zazen? How do I get my family? How do I get my children into Zazen? People ask that question a lot. And my answer is always, don't try. Just don't even try.
Ivy, do you have a message for all the girls out there who want to be just like you and play guitar? Any advice?
It's so much work. It's too much work. Don't bother.
All right. That's the advice for you kids. Just don't try. No.
Give up.
Try.
If they ask about it, and if the question is sincere, then that's a good time to talk about it. Then you can talk about it, and that's wonderful. But for the most part, nobody wants to hear you preaching about the stuff. Nobody wants to hear you proselytize. You sound like, one of these people on the street trying to convert somebody to some religion. I actually had Buddhists try to convert me to Buddhism one time. This is years ago. This is when I was living in Chicago. When I was living in Chicago, which must have been the early 90s, late 80s sometime. And these Nichiren Buddhists were on the street doing a kind of thing like Scientologists and Jehovah's Witnesses sometimes do, trying to convert people to Nichiren Buddhism, to Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. I thought it was funny because I was already well steeped into Buddhism by then. I just kind of decided to play it off like, oh, nah, yeah, I'm not that interested, haha, normal guy, I'm just going to go do my work, whatever. I didn't get into a discussion about it because I thought it was kind of silly. Here is another thing that he says. This is real nice, and let me just read it because I kind of like it. Although we speak of practice, it is not a practice that you can do. You can't do Zazen. That is to say, the body does nothing, the mouth does not recite, the mind does not think things over, the six senses are left to their own clarity and unaffected. So this is not the 16-stage practice of the hearers. Hearers are, I think it's Shravakas is the word. It's a kind of disparaging term for people who hear about Buddhism but don't actually do any Buddhism. They probably a lot of people who watch my channel are kind of like that. But so it's not the 16-stage practice. These practices that have stages, that have, advancement levels. It's not about advancing up the ladder. Nor is it the practice of understanding the 12 factors of interdependent emergence of those whose practice is founded upon isolation. So this is a little bit of disparagement of isolation. Zazen is, Zen Buddhism is usually done in a group. Okay. Most of my Zazen is done alone by myself at home, but I don't do isolated practice deliberately. I'm alone at home because my wife goes to work and I'm just by myself with the dog. So that's what I mean. But it's not a practice that you're trying to go off into the woods for a year or in a cave for a year and do. There are people who within the tradition who did that, like Bodhidharma, for example, sat in a cave for 9 years. But that wasn't his main practice. What we consider to be Bodhidharma's most important practice is when he came out of the cave and started teaching people. And sitting with people. So let's get on with this. Nor is it the 6 perfections within numberless activities of the Bodhisattvas. It is without struggle at all, so it's called awakening or enlightenment. So all of this stuff about understanding the 12 factors of interdependent emergence, I wrote about that in my book Sit Down and Shut Up, if you want to go look about that. The 12-fold chain of codependent co-origination is what I think I called it, which is what Tim, my first Zen teacher, had called it. And those things are interesting, but the practice is not a practice that you're doing in order to figure that out. You're actually doing the practice in order to see the reality of just sitting. So all this stuff about 6 perfections, that's something else people ask me about all the time, and I don't know which the paramitas. And there are 6 of them, but I don't know what they are. I'm not concerned about that. And here's what he says. Just rest in the samadhi in which all of the Buddhas receive and use themselves as Buddhas. Jiju Zanmai. So that's Jiju Zanmai is what I talked about. That's that segment of Bendoa that's often excerpted and presented as a separate thing. So that's the samadhi of receiving and using the self. Wandering playfully in the 4 practices of peace and bliss of those open to openness. Hey, open to openness, that's a nice. This is the profound and inconceivable practice of Buddhas and patriarchs, or ancestors, if you want to say ancestors. So so that's just sitting. That's just sitting, no matter whether you feel it's great or not. That's what he's talking about there. And he says, although we speak of realization, this realization does not hold to itself as being realization. So it's realization that occurs whether you notice that you're realizing it or not. That's the interesting thing. This is practice of the supreme samadhi, and samadhi is usually defined as a special state of mind that one has during meditation, but that's not how Dogen or Kazon defined it. This is the practice of the supreme samadhi, which is the knowing of unborn, unobstructed, and spontaneously arising awareness. That's the awareness that you have right now that's allowing you to watch this video. That is what we call, what it's called, unborn, unobstructed, spontaneously arising awareness. That's what's going on right now. That's the deal. This minute that you're watching this video, that's what's happening. It is the door of luminosity which opens out onto the realization of the Buddha, born through the practice of the great ease. This goes beyond the patterns of holy and profane, goes beyond confusion and wisdom. So confusion, wisdom, same thing. This is the realization of unsurpassed enlightenment as our own nature. So that's just a few more of the things that Kazan has to say in that essay. Let me give you the title again. Zazen Yojinki. Let me see it. And the rest of it can be found on Muho Nulke's page. I didn't leave a link. So I'll leave a link on this video, and then I'll go back and retroactively leave a link on the other video so you can read the whole thing if you want. Alright, that's it for me. That's all I want to say today. If you want to contribute to me saying more stuff like this, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen, somewhere around here, .info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. hardcorezen.info/donate. There you go. That's where you will find my PayPal and Patreon links. Those are my main ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me, so don't complain. Some people do when I ask for donations. You don't have to send a donation. Anyway, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, how you doing? You did a lot of cameos in today's video. That was very nice of you to be the co-star of my video. I appreciate that. All right, let's say bye to the folks. Bye, folks.